Everyone. Just wanted to jump in real quick before we get started and say a quick thank you to all my patrons on Patreon. Thank you for supporting this class, and I look forward to creating new videos and new content with your support. So thank you very much. Your name should be appearing in this general area right now. Thanks. And let's go look at our exercises. So in the last class, we only got to number 34. So that's what we'll do in this class as well. And we'll just start going through them. So I see 5 people. That means you get about 7 each. What if we divide them into we'll just do them in groups of 4 and then finish up what we have left, like one at a time. So first person on my list is Rasmus. Rasmus, do you want to read the first 4?
Sure. So it's a pefhob joke evol, which is, I just need to find my notes. Yeah, his work was completed or was finished.
Yeah. You really have to use the passive voice to make this make sense in English. But in Coptic, it's active, right? His work.
Yeah, completed.
Completed, yeah.
That's what Lambden spends a lot of about a page talking about how some transitive verbs have intransitive uses in both Egyptian and English.
Yeah, and they don't match up very nicely. That the way Lambden talks about it is it's important for students to talk about these things and make it clear what's going on. I do think that he puts a little too much focus on translating things, because if you're just reading the Egyptian, reading the Coptic, you don't actually need any help if you're just reading what it says, like a pefhov jokevo, pefhov af jokevo. Like if you just read what it says, it's not confusing at all. It's when you try to translate it into English that it becomes a problem. So we'll definitely look at these as they come up, but I also think that it's kind of advisable not to overthink it, because really what we should always be trying to do whenever possible is not translate things, but really comprehend the Coptic. And the reason we translate things when we do these exercises is just to ensure that we have some like benchmark for measuring our understanding. But the goal is not to translate, the goal is to read the Coptic, in which case it's not confusing at all. Anyway.
Yeah, the next one. Senamuch en rashe en kinen psyche. Our souls will fill with joy, or will be filled with joy.
Yeah, exactly.
Should I just go on?
Yeah.
Yeah. So en dipistewe erok an, I don't believe you.
Yeah, good. I actually read this incorrectly the first time I read it. I read it as I don't trust you. And we discussed it in the previous class, and it can really mean both. So pistewe can be believe or trust. The meaning isn't that distinct, but there's a slight difference in nuance there. But I would say either answer is correct. I don't believe you, or I don't trust you.
Yeah. And the last one is Dina Hob Hempejai, which is I will hide in the desert.
Good. Yeah, I will hide in the desert. Really nothing confusing there, because English uses hide both transitively and intransitively exactly the same way. So it's a case where they align perfectly. Not always true. Okay, good job, Rasmus. Moaz, do you want to do the next 4?
Sure. Ab diabolos beiraze emof in sashif in ho. So the devil tempted him for 7 days.
Good. Yeah. Something I thought was sort of interesting about this one. We have 2 Greek words, and then the rest is all Egyptian. And I think so. In general, it's not really the case that you can always say something about the fact that a word is from Greek versus being, from the Egyptian language. Sometimes it's kind of random. Or it's just not necessarily meaningful. So for example, in English, we use the word chef to describe the head cook at a restaurant. Obviously, that's a French word that's been borrowed. We're using it in a more specific circumstance, but it's not necessarily that different in meaning, or it doesn't really tell us much of anything. There are hundreds of examples like that where English uses the Latin or the French word as opposed to the native Anglo-Saxon word, where it just doesn't really mean anything. It's like one word just kind of rose to prominence by chance and doesn't tell us anything. There are lots of other examples where it does tell us something. So my go-to example is always animals versus food. So in English, we say beef, pork, and mutton, but in describing food. But if we're describing the animals themselves, we say cow, pig, and sheep. And the reason for that, I believe, and feel free to correct me on this, but I believe the reason is that after the Norman conquest, the nobility in England spoke French, and their serfs would have spoken English, or Anglo-Saxon that evolved into English. And they would have used, those people would have used the Anglo-Saxon words for animals that they encountered in their everyday life, but then they would have used the French words for food if they were like serving the table of the nobility. So English got this kind of dual vocabulary where there's this really neat dividing line between French words and Anglo-Saxon words. And it is quite meaningful. It tells you something about the historical circumstances. I think this is such a case. Not all cases are like this, but this is a really good example where things are very cleanly divided. So we have devil and tempt are both from Greek, and then things like 7, day, him, etc. Are all from Egyptian. And that is because earlier stages of Egyptian had no word for devil and no word for tempt, really. They just didn't conceptualize things in this way. It's really with the advent of Christianity that you need these terms, so they borrowed them from Greek. Yeah, so useful thing to notice when it arises. I'll try to point it out in the future whenever it arises, so that we can see.
Same with English, really. The words devil and tempt are both loan words, but in 7 days aren't.
Nice. I didn't notice that. Nice catch, Erasmus. Yeah. That's totally true. Tempt is definitely from Latin. There's a church origin from that. Devil is clearly from French, but ultimately derived from Latin.
From Greek.
Oh, from Greek. Yeah, of course.
Diabalein.
Yeah. Oh, what does diabalein mean?
It's to throw something or to accuse. So it's the slanderer.
The slanderer.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I never noticed that. Yeah. And then the words like 7, day, and him, etc. Are all ultimately from Proto-Germanic.
Him is also Greek.
Wait, what?
I'm pretty sure him is also Greek.
Oh, is it?
Him? No, it's Germanic.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
It has that M accusative ending.
Yeah. It's the same in all the German or the Germanic languages, like Danish, him, Deutsch. Yeah, it's. I'm pretty sure it's Germanic, him. If you mean him as in the personal pronoun, and not in him as in something you sing. Which of course,
sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, I thought you meant him like the biblical
song. Oh, I see. Yeah.
That's great.
And you can kind of see from those examples, these words are used in very specific contexts. Loan words, when a language borrows a word from another language, it tends to overspecify it. That's like a generally true rule. So, like the example of chef, English borrows this general word that just means boss and uses it to mean head cook because of French cuisine or whatever. I don't actually know the historical reasons, but we can guess and be close enough. So we've specified that word. Same thing happens with words like devil and tempt. Tempt just means like to probe something or to try something. But then in English, it's very specifically like to pull someone towards a sinful act. And we have the same thing here. Religious language tends to be foreign loanwords that have then been specified in a specific religious context. So yeah, that's a caveat, I think, to what I'm saying. But the general trend, there is an overall correlation between Greek loanwords in Coptic and concepts that weren't used very often in earlier Egyptian. And then there's another phenomenon where, in many cases, Egyptian words are themselves specified, and they're sort of they obtain a new connotation and denotation both. So, for instance, the word for demon in Bohairic is ich, which ultimately comes from the word ah, which means effective in earlier Egyptian, and then it's like the effective spirit of the dead, so a dead person whose spirit can interact with the living. And then in a Christian context, that word becomes the word for like an evil spirit. The word amenti becomes the word for hell in Coptic, but it is actually the word for the west in earlier Egyptian, and it actually comes from the word, it's related towards like yamin, that means right.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking up the river, the west is on the right. So it's all of these things are connected, and that word has been given a very precise religious meaning that it didn't have before. It was just the the resting place of the dead, and then it becomes like Hades, and and then it becomes the Christian hell.
I was really struck the other day that Revelations has noon for abyss.
Yeah, that's another one.
Like the primordial waters that things were created out of.
Yeah, in Genesis too, God, his face is over the noon in the Coptic version.
Wow.
And then in the story of Noah also, it's the windows of noon that are opened to flood the earth.
Wow.
So that
neat.
concept was so readily borrowed because it actually is identical to the Canaanite concept. So the world that we live in is a bubble of air and earth floating in an infinite cosmic ocean. So if it rains a lot, that's holes in the roof, and if you dig down and find water, you've dug a hole through the bottom. That concept was identical. That's how they understood the world. Yeah, it's kind of neat. People often talk about those things as being sort of quaint, but if you think about it, it's really not bad. It's not like unscientific or anything. Every direction you go in, you hit water. And if you don't have, telescopes where you can see the phases of Venus or something to figure out that the Earth revolves around the sun, there's really there's no reason to think that there's anything other than water the farther you go, because that's what the empirical evidence suggests. So I think it's actually it's a very healthy, responsible worldview. It just happens to not be correct.
Especially when the sky is blue.
Yeah. Basically everything, if we didn't know as much as we do about cosmology now, everything is telling you that we are surrounded by water. Because basically anywhere you poke a hole, water comes out. So it's a very rational assumption. Anyway, so yeah, that concept was very readily borrowed really all over the world because it looks like that. Okay, that's a lot of interesting stuff, not necessarily related to question 5, but hopefully fun and interesting. Moaz, was it your turn? Do you want to keep reading?
Yeah, Pem pneuma en akatarton wash an evol. So the unclean spirit does not wish to come out.
Yes, very good. And again, another case where we have unclean spirit is Greek. They're not going to use the word ich because that's been specified for like malevolent spirit, and they're not even going to use it when they're saying unclean spirit. They just kept the Greek. It's kind of strange.
Okay, empoish pe cosmos teref navol evol. At that time, the whole world will be scattered.
Yes. Yeah, be scattered is a good translation. There's really no English equivalent to vol-evol. It's like, It's like come unraveled or something, or disintegrate. What about this? What's this epsilon?
So I think it's because it starts with a consonant.
But it's only one consonant, so that that rule actually doesn't apply here.
Yeah, then I don't know why there's an epsilon.
Yeah,
there.
same. I don't know either. But so I tried to figure it out, and my guess is that this is actually the phrase impeiwoish, like in this time or in that time, and it's become a fixed phrase, and it has been slightly reduced in pronunciation. That's my guess. But yeah, I don't know for sure either. It's weird. There's no phonetic reason to have it, so it must be. It must come from some other source, and the only obvious source is the demonstrative adjective. Yeah, demonstrative adjective this time, so must be it.
Okay. So ap ville Jos Jenanai Pajois. The blind man said, "Pity me, my lord."
Good. Yeah. Okay. Not really much to be said about this. I will note the suffix pronoun on joos. Coptic really wants to put an object on the word jo that means to say. So literally, the blind man said it, je, mercy me, my
Can we
lord.
say that S consonant is a dummy
Yeah.
consonant?
It
I mean subject, yeah.
A dummy object in this case.
Object, yeah.
But it is, you could make an analogy with a English phrase like "it is raining," where it's like, what is it? It doesn't really refer to anything. So yeah, it is a dummy, definitely. It's something that's required by the grammar, but doesn't necessarily carry any meaning on its own. And on that note, Mustafa, do you want to do these four?
Who?
You.
Yeah, okay. Up now, empef şemşe jok ebol. Up now, his companion.
Now means it means hour. Really, it's something more like shift.
Yeah. Shift of his companion
Service.
has done service has done has completed.
Yeah, good. Why do you say companion? I'm trying to figure out what word you're thinking of.
Şemşe, as I remember, something like follower from Middle Egyptian.
Ah, yes. Okay, good. Yeah. So this comes from the verb shemsi, and there's a word shemsu in earlier Egyptian that means server, essentially, follower, literally follower. But yeah, person in the service of another. In this case, it really only survives in Coptic as a verb, meaning something like to serve, and then as the verbal noun, as in this case, like his service.
His service. I get it. His service shift is completed. Something like.
Yeah. That's
okay.
it.
I suppose just it's mean companion or something like that. And then now o an gente hora it is actually future first feature of
Yep.
mean approach.
Wo is you're probably thinking of hon. Hon means to approach. Honahun really. Wo is, it's a few things. It can mean to add something to something else, like to put something somewhere, or it can mean to dwell in a place.
Yeah. You all will not dwell in this country.
Yes, very good. And kora is something like generally means something like countryside or region. Doesn't translate all that well. There's one thing that I have to note. So you said you all will not dwell in this country. So you're translating 10 as you all. The word for you all in this form is teten.
Yeah, teten, yeah. It's you did not, you won't dwell in this countryside.
It's not you.
10,
Pretend that the T is not there. It's just the N.
yeah, we. Okay.
We,
then.
yeah. And that's super confusing at first because you've had a rule that's like anytime you see 10, it's always you plural. But because of the T that's part of this pronoun, it's no longer that, right? The T is part of the pronoun. It's not part of the suffix. So the suffix is really only the N. So we will not dwell in this country.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Timewe.
Yeah.
Timewe je entok o dikaios pe. I am thinking you are a just righteous. You are a righteous one.
Yeah, good. I am thinking is fine. I would probably translate this, I think that you are a righteous one, because there's really two meanings here. There's I am thinking in the sense that like I'm using my brain to process information. And then there's I think that, which is equivalent to saying I believe that something is true.
Yeah,
And
that's much more logical.
yeah, so English does this and Coptic does it as well. They both have that same range of meanings.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. He or.
Embal and belewe nawon his eyes of blind men. Yeah, it's plural.
Yep.
Now will open.
Yeah, the eyes of the blind ones will open. Good. Okay. If there are no questions about that, we'll go to Joe. Joe, do you want to take these four?
Sure thing. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Joe.
Number 13, Kamewe Je Anagnim. Who do you think that I am?
Yeah, good. You did way better than I did with this one. I tried to translate it.
You know who I am.
Yeah, it is that. That's the meaning. You think that I am who, literally. But yeah, your translation is correct. Who do you think I am?
It struck me as a reminder of Jesus' words from to his disciples. Who do you say that I am?
Yeah, I think that's probably where it's taken from. Honestly, I bet it's exactly that way in the original.
I didn't look that one up, but yeah. Number 14, Etveu tetenkota min henrome te mi. Why are you consorting with men of this sort or such men?
Very good. That word kote min is to consort with or to associate with. So that's correct. The word kote itself is kind of confusing because it doesn't correspond to a single English word. It's like, it literally means to turn, but it can be like to go about, right? To continually walk around, quite literally to walk around in a space, or in this case, to like, why do you go around with men of this sort? It becomes more metaphorical. Like, why do you hang out with people like this? Yeah, good translation.
Let's see, number 15. Nefsnauch bolabol nefwerete. His fetters were loosened from his legs or feet.
Good. Yeah, exactly right. Why do you say from? I assume that this is what you're translating as from.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It is. That's why I asked it.
Yeah, since N has pretty much any kind of meaning in Coptic, I took a little bit of literary license with it.
Yeah, that's good. That's exactly the right way to do it. I always tell people when I'm teaching people languages, I always tell them over and over, like, language is like jazz. You know, you just kind of, you shoot from the hip and land where you land, make it make sense. So that's exactly the right way to go about it. I brought it up because it brings to light this thing about Egyptian prepositions versus English prepositions. So Egyptian prepositions do not correspond well to English prepositions at all. They just, like you said, N can mean pretty much anything. N has a very, very low information content in the context of Egyptian. It means almost nothing at all, but it establishes some kind of relationship. More generally, the prepositions just don't. So if you imagine sort of a space of all the relationships between things that can be expressed by prepositions, Egyptian and English don't divide up that space in the same way. They don't create the same partition. Egyptian really likes to combine the meanings of with, in, on, by, and from into a single thing, which is N, or it can also be hen sometimes. And the reason for this is that when a verb expresses any kind of change in Egyptian, the preposition tends to represent the situation before the change happened, whereas English tends to represent things in terms of the aftermath. So we would say his fetters fell away from his feet, where, like, we're imagining them, they've already fallen away and now they're away from his feet. Egyptian says his fetters fell away on his feet. So they were on his feet, but because of this, they're now not. So it's just a different way of conceptualizing that process. Good. Your answer was right, but I still wanted to use it as an excuse to talk about this because we're going to see examples like this in the future where if you translate the word that means in as in, it makes absolutely no sense. So yeah, it's a good thing to know about.
Could you say something, and I wouldn't read it this way, but something like the fetters of his legs? That would be separating the separating the preposition from the original noun.
Yeah, and Coptic can do that. And there are examples, very few examples where Coptic actually does do this. Normally, the examples that we find are more like spoken language. So spoken Coptic can definitely do this, just like we can in English. Like I saw my friend yesterday because I was going to the store and I needed milk in the store or whatever, right? You can just stick a preposition at the end because you forgot to say it before. Coptic can do this as well. In most written Coptic, this won't happen because of the editorial process of writing, right? Writing is not speech. There's different rules involved. So yeah, it's possible, but not likely.
Okay. All right. And number 16, I'll hope and chi nesneo e matoi impero. Let's see, this would be her children were hidden from the soldiers of the king.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. So it's not her children. It's just the siblings.
Oh, yeah.
The siblings, they hid or they were hidden. You know, you have to translate. I think nesneo is the subject here. So the siblings hid, but you can also say it were hidden because it could mean that. And then, how did you translate this? Emmatoi.
I originally said from the soldiers of the king.
Yeah, good. We would say they hid from the soldiers. That's the English idiom. Coptic says they hid toward the soldiers. This is another great example of how the prepositions just don't work in the same way. The preposition in Coptic, we normally translate it as to or towards, but it really means something like there's a thing here and it is in some way pushing against a thing over there. So in the case of hide, you're hiding from someone because you're doing the action. against them. If you're traveling to a place because you're starting here and you're headed in that direction. So the preposition "a" is really much more abstract than any English preposition can conceptualize, but your translation is good. They hid from the soldiers. Okay, thanks, Joe. Ralph, do you want to do 4?
Sure. So, itbeu kepatima matnai. Why did you Bitima?
Rebuke.
Why did you rebuke me?
Yes, good, and you got it right. So the "nai" is really like
me.
for me or to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that verb, it's like, yeah, same kind of deal. I won't mention that every time, but I want to try to mention it regularly because I know it's something that students always struggle with. The prepositions just don't line up. They just don't. I'm gonna do 18.
Is there an extra A there?
There is a missing something.
There's a missing N. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
In tetan naimi an enef parabole.
Yeah.
You won't know his stories or his parables.
Yeah, good. And in this case, Amy can mean something
Recognize,
like
understand, maybe.
Understand. It's originally from a word that means swallow. In the same way that we use that idiomatically in English, like I just can't swallow that. They used it the same way. And then it stopped meaning to swallow and it became just understand. Is there something else I was going to say about this? No? Good. Okay. Go to 19.
Okay. In sena pistewe ena shajean. They won't believe our words.
Not our.
But, nah. Oh, my words.
Yeah, good. They will not believe my words.
My words.
It's kind of like when I tell people about the actual UFOs that were recorded. Has everyone seen this? I know this is a huge tangent, but I just tell everyone because nobody knows about it, and it's so crazy to me. There's video of actual UFOs that the US military has confirmed is real, and nobody's talking about it. And it's just so crazy to me that nobody's talking about that. Like a Pentagon official said, he firmly believes that these are alien spacecraft visiting the Earth and collecting data about us.
Really?
And really, yes. I'll put a link in the Discord. The New York Times released the footage a couple of years ago, and the US military has since confirmed that it's real, and even military officials have said quite openly that they believe that these are alien spacecraft, and no one is talking about it. No one even knows about it, and I cannot handle that. Like I'm a pretty skeptical person. I'm not like a hardcore like aliens are real type person, but this is pretty solid evidence.
It's very weird if the military has confirmed it, but people aren't talking about it.
It's so weird. That's the part that's weirdest to me. Like the idea that there might be aliens, like, yeah, there are billions of galaxies. Of course, there's probably intelligent life somewhere in the universe. That's not that shocking. The fact that we have this evidence and literally no one is ever talking about it, that's the part that I just can't get used to. It's like we all learned that aliens are real and we just went on with our day. Like I feel like we should stop for a second and just ponder this because that's, pretty interesting. Anyway, sorry about that. Sorry, I'm ranting about aliens. Anyway, I'll put the link to the news articles in the Discord, and you can look at it yourself and see how you feel about it. I'm not trying to convince anyone, but it is just pretty striking to me. I think it's pretty solid. Anyway, Ralph, do you want to do 20?
In Jijewe Nakote Epentime. The aliens will return to our town.
Good, yes. And this could mean a few different things. So obviously these are terrestrial aliens, but that's a correct translation still. And then Nakote can mean, they will surround our town, as in they will like go around it. So these are, hostile enemies. Yeah. It could mean they will return to our town, like they just sacked our city and they left, but they're coming back. We need to prepare. Or it can mean there's a hostile force on the march, and they will like divert to our town on their way to prevent us from being on their flank or something like that. It can mean any of those things. So kote really has a very broad range of meaning. Yeah. I can't decide which one is best, actually. You really need the context to know exactly which one is being expressed here. Anyway, okay, we don't have enough for everyone to do 4. Let's do them by 2s. So I'll go back to Rasmus, and we'll just do these 2 if that's all right.
Yeah. So the first one is at pe one af e wollen wine, which would be something along the lines of the heaven or the sky opened and a great light went out.
Yes. More precisely came out, but no matter. Same meaning. Yeah, so the sky opened and a great light shined out from it. Kind of like I'm picturing like a Marvel sky beam type situation.
And the next one, ateshime arke en rime, which then would be the woman began to weep.
Yeah, and seeing this again, I talked about it in the last class. I'm going to go ahead and talk about it very briefly now. It is very often the case in these exercises that there are stereotyped activities. This book is the product of an earlier time. Lambden himself is now deceased, but he was obviously he grew up in a very different time. I don't think he did these things on purpose. Everyone I know who knew him says that he's like a very generous, peaceful, liberal person. I don't think he was at all sexist, but I think that this is a good indication that these stereotypes kind of go unaddressed in our own minds, and I'm going to point them out anytime they show up, just to make sure that we're not perpetuating that. Yeah, for some reason, only women cry in this book, which is nothing like real life. At least not like my life, because I cry in sad movies. Like, yeah, I'm just a big crier.
Because it is mainly for Coptic language, and Coptic language much more near to some Afro-Asiatic language. So
yeah, so culturally, Egypt at this time was very male dominated. Now too, actually even more so now, but at that time especially, it was still fairly male dominated. Christianity actually strengthened that a little bit, because it pulled in cultural ideas that were not Egyptian. So Egypt was pretty egalitarian in the Pharaonic period. Women could inherit property and start businesses and do all the kinds of things. They could petition for divorce in the same way that a man could, but it was still somewhat male dominated. Like when Hatshepsut became king, she uses a lot of masculine features in her iconography. So that we can still see some of that. So there was that culturally. But I actually think in real Coptic texts, men weep as often as women do, which in my experience is much more like real life. I don't think women actually cry more often than men do in real life, at least not in my life. I mean, if anything, my dad's a bit of a crier and my mom's very stoic. I saw her cry once when her father passed away. I think that's the only time I've ever seen her cry. So yeah, I don't know. These stereotypes, they're embedded in our psyches. They come out, if you need to create a bunch of Coptic exercises, they will emerge. But it's a good idea to take note of them and just make sure we're not perpetuating any of that. Anyway, okay, so 23 and 24. Moaz, do you want to take those two?
Yeah, Meshach Senaket Teoten Epahu. Maybe y'all will be turned back.
Good. Yes. It's not. Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe they will turn you back, and then as passive, maybe y'all will be turned back. Okay, good. Exactly correct.
Okay. En sho'os hare en so and soshe. The shepherds are guarding the sheep in the field.
Good. Yeah. And notice hare e. So this is actually, this is kind of part of the verb. Hare takes e after it for the direct object. Leo Depoit has a really interesting story where he detected I think it was a demotic forgery because they used hare e, or they used hare en, the object, when they should have used hare e. So yeah.
Like
Anyway.
a forgery by an Egyptologist, or?
Yep. Yeah, it does happen sometimes that Egyptologists will obtain old pieces of papyrus and then and write on them a fake Egyptian text in order to make the papyrus more valuable. People do that. It makes no sense to me because it's like, if you wanted to be rich, why did you become an Egyptologist? Like, that's kind of part of I knew that as a teenager. I knew I was never gonna, never gonna buy a Learjet. Like, that's just not how it works. But yeah, people do that. There's the most recent and most prominent case was the Gospel of Jesus's wife. So there is a little fragment of papyrus that has the phrase in the middle. It says something like, "And Jesus said, my wife." It is definitely a forgery. Multiple Coptologists came out at the time and said that it was a forgery, including my teacher, Leo Depoit. He wrote a paper arguing that it was a forgery. And basically what happened is someone who had studied Coptic at the university level obtained an ancient papyrus and wrote on it. And they tried to write something as shocking and interesting as they could think of. So they made Jesus have a wife. And it was a huge thing, like a scandal. I forget her name. The professor at I think it's Harvard Divinity School published it without realizing that it was a forgery, and it was a big disagreement. People were really unfair to her. People were very mean to her about it when it was, from all indications, it was a totally innocent mistake. But if you're interested, I'll throw that in the Discord too, so you can go read more about it. The Gospel of Jesus's wife. This is probably 5 years ago that this came out, and it was a big story. Anyway, okay, so that was Moaz. Mustafa, do you want to do two?
Yeah. Anef bar Tom hem pamo. His eyes complete or fill
Close.
in close with water, in water.
Not mo, mu. Water would be
Death.
Yeah. His eyes closed in death.
In death. Yeah.
That's it.
Snavo hem pakote and Jerusalem. Jerusalem. Let me. Snow will dwell in the neighborhood of Jerusalem.
Se.
Se means he.
You might know it from Middle Egyptian as sen.
Yeah, they will dwell in neighborhood of Jerusalem.
Yeah, neighborhood is good. I would probably say something like environs, or surroundings or something like that. But yeah, neighborhood is fine. So they will dwell in the surroundings of Jerusalem. This se is one of two cases in Coptic where the sen type pronoun survives. Everywhere else it's replaced by u, which was borrowed from Semitic. But in this and in the conjunctive, you have se. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. A couple of just the remnants of that sen pronoun. Joe, do you want to take two?
All right, number 27. Tina nej paf enehor. I will throw the meat to the dogs.
Good, yeah.
And 28. Ten namuta erof mparan mpefyot. We will call him or name him after his father.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a set phrase.
Yeah. Yeah, mute then with the word ran, like call someone a name, is like a fixed phrase in Coptic that normally doesn't translate very cleanly into English. But we will call him the name of his father. We will address him by the name of his father or something like that. But means we're going to give him his father's name. He's going to be a junior. Okay, good. Good job, Joe. Ralph, do you want to take two more?
Ansept epistole intaxiamos an. So we received the letter which you wrote to us.
Good.
Which you
Yeah.
wrote it to us.
Which you wrote it to us. And that's the resumptive pronoun because of the relative.
Right. Et veu tetin pistewe and weishnem.
Nestewe.
In tetin nestewe. Okay, not pistewe.
Right.
So why do y'all that's fast sometimes? Or always?
Yeah,
every time?
Always. Yeah, all the time. Why do y'all fast all the time? You can imagine this being asked to like a group of monks by a what is it? A cadet, whatever. What's the English word for a lay person, or like an initiate,
novice,
a tyro, a neophyte. I'm just going through all my SAT words at this point. I forget the word for like someone who wants to become a monk, a petitioner. There's some word for that. Whatever. Okay, Rasmus, do you want to do another one?
Yes. Anesbal much en remjoe. Her eyes became full of tears or filled with tears.
Yeah, exactly. That's the plural of, I can't even think of what the singular is.
I think is the bal in tears, you mean?
Yeah, I think it's remei.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember.
Remjoe. But that's a really elaborate plural. Good, and again, you know, you just got like some like subconscious sexism going on here. Like it's always women crying. Probably not on purpose.
The next one, Ansahi tehyean. They are not on the road.
Yeah, good.
See the sort of conjugation of the adverbial phrase, which is very interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, so the adverbial sentence uses the same subject pronouns as the first present does. So that's really what you're supposed to be seeing here. It's also negated in exactly the same way. There's an optional N at the beginning, and then there's an obligatory on after the phrase, right? So sehi tehye an, they're not on the road. That's how you say that. That's the default way of saying that in Coptic. What's interesting about it is that the first present and the adverbial sentence both use the same grammatical construction, and you might be able to tell me why. Anyone who studied earlier Egyptian, maybe can you tell me why those are so similar in Coptic?
Who?
It can be you. Anyone.
What's that? Actually, I couldn't get it.
So why are the first present, as in any of the, here, this one, tirime. So this, if we were to negate it, we would say en tirime an, right? Or tirime.
Yeah.
And then we have, I would say di hi dehye, I am on the road, or en di dehye an, I'm not on the road. They use the same grammatical construction. This is a verbal.
Yeah.
This is adverbial. Why? Why are they the same?
Because it's same root and it's come from Middle Egyptian. It's something like ni and nan.
Yeah. So what is
these negations?
What is that is it? Yeah. It's from. It actually comes from. I mean, late Egyptian is really as far as we can go back and reliably talk about the negations because they change between Middle and Late Egyptian, but like bu and then yuna is what they come from.
It's much
But
more
there's-
late Egyptian as I know.
But this thing actually comes from even earlier in Middle Egyptian. You have this construction, and actually at the end of Old Egyptian, you have this construction. This is the like Iowi hair remet. So di rime is in Late Egyptian, it would be tui hair remet. I am upon weeping. So this is actually a verbal infinitive here.
Yeah, there is something like maybe sejemef construction. Maybe it's kind of.
So it's actually not the sejemef, it's the pseudo-verbal. And it was originally an adverbial sentence. So it's like saying, I am upon crying. So it actually is a prepositional phrase grammatically with the verbal infinitive. And that survives all the way into Coptic. I mean, obviously now it's just a conjugated verb form. It's just used as the present tense and the first future and all these things. Nobody is conceptualizing it as an adverbial sentence anymore when they're speaking Coptic, but grammatically it still retains that connection. So the negation and the pronouns for the adverbial sentence, as here, are the same as the negation and pronouns for the first present and first future, because ultimately they came from the same grammatical construction. It's worth knowing. I'll also mention it again when we get to things like third future. You can actually see all of these older elements, how they survive into Coptic. And then that has some real impact in the syntax of Coptic itself, although they're no longer being treated this way anymore, which is super interesting. You know, we're pulling grammatical features from 2,000 years before. So yeah, anyway, Joe, do you want to do 33? Oh wait, did I skip, Mustafa, did I skip you? I'm sorry, do you want to do 33, Mustafa? Sorry, Joe.
Of course, why not? Interef sotem pechro of choshet ebol. When you listen this voice, when he listened this voice, he accept.
Choshet is like a glance or look.
Actually, there is a phrase, as I remember, choshet ebol means expect or something like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna look real quick. I'm sure you're right. I didn't even think of that. Wait, choshet. So choshet evol hate is look before, and that means to look forward to. Choshet by itself, or choshet evol, is just like to look out, or to look up.
He looked up, yeah.
So when he heard the voice, he looked up.
He looked up. Yeah. Or when he listened a word, this word, the word, he looked up something like in dictionary.
I don't think so, actually. I think Coptic would use shine for that kind of for where we use the idiom look up in English. That would actually be something like seek or search for in Coptic. This is like, and hro, it doesn't mean word. It actually means, voice, and not even just voice, because there's another word, sme, that means voice in normal circumstances. Like I'm speaking to you with my voice right now. Hro is associated with loud voices or thunder, or anything like this. So it's kind of marked as like a loud voice. So it's like when he heard the shouting, he looked up, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not quite that specific, but it does have that nuance to it. Okay, and Joe, you want to do 34?
Number 34, Tirime ebol je apason mu. Because my brother.
Is everyone's sound coming through okay?
Not.
Okay, Joe, you broke up on that. Do you want to give us the translation again?
Yeah, sorry about that. I am weeping because my brother died.
There we go. Yeah, I'm weeping because my brother died. And this is a good example of the use of the word je to mean because. It only means je, and I will always tell you, you're always allowed to translate je as je. I'm weeping, je, my brother died. I feel like that's the best way to get a sense of what that word means, because it just doesn't correspond to a single English word. It's much more broad in its meaning. It's basically just relating two clauses together in a sort of explanatory way. It can also be used for quotes. Really, it's the same word. It ultimately comes from erjed, which means in order to say. So it's sort of like the English i.e. Anyway, okay. Sorry, Ralph. You got shorted one question.
I think
Next
you
time.
Oh, did I skip you, Moaz? I'm so sorry.
It's
I skipped
okay.
you
It's
and
okay.
Mustafa both, and then I went back to Mustafa, and I didn't go all the way back to you. Sorry
It's
about
okay. I had a
Um,
question about sotum. Is it a cognate or is it borrowed from Semitic?
that. Wait, what word are you thinking?
Sotum.
What Semitic word?
Like in Arabic, salt.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know that word. So
What does south mean?
It means sound or noise.
oh, okay. It's not a verb. I don't think so. I would have to actually look it up to know for sure. Do you have any way to look up the etymology of Arabic words?
I mean, there's not a lot of resources online about that, so it's pretty difficult.
Yeah, I found it to be
As
really
I know, there is a theory about Sejam, Sejam something like similar in Semitic language, Semia or
Yeah.
Semia.
That one, I would say it probably is a
But it
cognate.
is something like there is a theory, but not so powerful, and because J is not same thing with Ain in
It's not,
Semitic
but I think
languages.
we have other cognates where you get the like palatal stop sound from in places where you have pharyngeal, because the pharyngeals in Semitic have a really complicated development. And in some cases, they do come from stop consonants. And we have a similar thing in Egyptian where the pharyngeals in Egyptian actually don't correspond to the pharyngeals in Semitic. The pharyngeals in Egyptian tend to come from a D type sound. And we even have cases where we have alternation. Some words will have a D and some of them will have an Ein in them in Egyptian. And that, like this is one right here. Like, why is D written with the hand, the same hand that's used to write the Ein sound? Probably because of a historical development where some things became Ds and some things became Eins. And you have a similar thing in Arabic with like the Dod sound, where that's originally a sort of pharyngeal lateral, like Lod or something. I can't even pronounce it.
Va. Something like Va, as I know.
So if you had Sotem and something like Yisma being related, you would have to have metathesis of the pharyngeal, and then whatever consonant that was developed into a stop in Egyptian, but a pharyngeal fricative in Arabic and Hebrew. That seems plausible to me, although I wouldn't defend it vehemently, because these relationships are really, really problematic. And we have a history in Egyptology of just kind of throwing in Semitic cognates and being like, this is a cognate because of this, and then this is a cognate because of this totally other thing. And it's like we end up having as many rules as we have cognates. And it's resulted in a situation where today there are very serious scholars who argue that Egyptian and Semitic are not actually genetically related. They are in sort of like a Sprachbund situation where there's so much borrowing between them that they end up being quite similar despite having no genealogical connection, and Proto-Afroasiatic may not even exist. There may be no Proto-Afro-Asiatic. People argue that. So yeah, I don't know. It's a big topic.
I mean, no one really knows for sure.
No one, yeah, and we'll probably never know for sure, honestly, because we just don't have enough evidence. Yeah. Anyway, good question. Definitely an interesting topic. Something we can talk about more as we go on. Really not my primary area of expertise either. So if other Egyptologists watch this, I hope they'll jump in and, you know, offer their own thoughts. Yeah. Okay, so no class next week because we're moving, and I will see y'all on April 3rd. And on April 3rd, we'll continue with.
Where are you moving?
To Berlin.
Where will you move? Is from another city or something like that?
We're moving to Berlin.
Berlin.
Yeah,
That's
Germany.
quite a move.
It's quite a move. It is. Oh my gosh, it's so much work. Actually, after I leave here, I'm going to go. I have to take my car to the dealership to get it appraised, so I can sell it because I have to sell my car. All that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I won't be here next Saturday because I'll actually be on an airplane at that time. But then the following Saturday, April 3rd, we'll continue with this. Okay, everyone have a great couple of weeks, and I'll see y'all soon.
You
Yeah.
too.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Good luck.
See you next week.